change your breakfast to a lunch, because really it was not fun to get here, but I'm glad I'm here, and I welcome everybody, and I want to thank the Maddak company for inviting me to speak this morning. I'm delighted, and I was excited when I got an email from Susan saying, come over, would you like to present? I said, sure, I love to talk.
We know.
And I'm going to be talking about a very short aspect of home modifications, which is avoiding functional obsolescence. Now, anybody familiar with that term? Okay, functional obsolescence basically is a term I'm going to talk about it later. But the problem is that when we find, or I find most functional obsolescence is when you have to battle with space. Because it's so easy when you have so much room and you can get all the equipment you need and put it in place and everything works perfectly. But when the room is not that big, what do? All right, and I'm going to show you just one picture. I didn't want to bring a lot of them to show you the different functional obsolescence that I found out there in my years of experience, but just one so you can quickly see the things that could have been avoided. So today, this morning, we're going to try to look at some of the challenges that we deal with in the home environment and the complexity of the client, as well as how to determine a systematic approach to determine how to use DME or any equipment to be more useful to the client. Now, I want to make this very clear. This presentation does not include advanced home modifications. All right? Why? Because advanced home modification, and I don't know if you have seen the position paper on AOTA that was published last year, is for those who are going to be in the design and construction. Okay? This course is only deal with equipment and space. The information about the advanced modification paper of AOTA is there. So what is the functional obsolescence? It basically, it's a reduction of the usefulness of an equipment or an item because it's no longer serves its purpose. This functional obsolescence, those who does or know a little bit about real estate, is the most common term used. When you go through a house and you're like, you have to go through these little small areas and turn around and you find a little cover hole but it doesn't work because you can't put nothing in there, nothing will fit. You know, it's basically a useless space, it's a useless area. So what are some of the things that influence or encourage the functional obsolescence? One of them is when a patient has very unrealistic goals. I don't know how many of you have noticed some patients say, but I want to do this, and I want to do that, and I want that, and I want this, and I want, and then next thing you know is you find yourself in a bind because you don't know exactly how to get the patient's wants into that space that they have. Also, a lot of times it's because the patient has no knowledge. And how many of you are doing home modifications here? 1, 2, 3, a few. How many of you have walked into a house that has been modified before by another therapist? And you find yourself like, oh, what happened here? That happened to me quite often. And because the patient doesn't understand and doesn't know, it has lack of knowledge, but a lot of times they just believe whatever the therapist wants to do with them and they just go along with it. But then, when they're all by themselves, they find themselves that these things are not working for them. All right? The patient lack of experience. A lot of times we get this equipment to client, we tell them how to use it, or we teach them how to use it once. They don't use it anymore. This experience is not there. They stop using it. And when you go back in there, well, how do you get into the tub? I can't remember how to do it. I just can't do it. What about from the other side of the spectrum here? Clinicians also are part of the equation here for functional obsolescence. And one is, again, overachieving. When you give in to a lot of the patient's wants, and let me make a quick clarification between wants and needs, okay? Patient may want something, but not necessarily what they need. And sometimes they need something, but they don't want it, or sometimes they do want it, so it all depends. And when therapists go along with some of the patients that want a lot of things, mistakes are bound to happen. Also, how many of you feel that you don't know everything that is out there for a client? So the lack of knowledge or understanding or awareness of equipment that is out there. How about lack of experience? How many of you feel that you're just starting to do home mod and you don't understand the whole thing? All right, so that plays a role as well. You find as you become more experienced or more seasoned in doing home mods, you start to make different approaches and different way of thinking with your clients. Now there are also external influences, and that is, like I said earlier, pre-existing modifications. That sometimes you can't change what is already in there, all right? And you have to deal with what is in there. Also limited funding. A lot of times the clients don't have money. So how do we manage that, you know? Sometimes they end up with a piece of equipment because that's what the insurance covered, not because what they can afford. But then that equipment is not used for the patient, it's not useful at all. And here's a picture. What do you think? Do you think this is a functional obsolescence here? Unfortunately, you can't see. I didn't take the whole picture from the background. But the toilet is right here. How do you think that client is going to get in that tub? When there's a tub railing on it. Okay? So the tub railing was intended to help the client stabilize themselves to be able to step over. But now if they don't have the room, what's the point? Okay? Those railings were there before their time. But this is a very tall client that I have, and actually the bars, that horizontal part was not even useful for it. Okay? And let me make another clarification when it comes to home modifications. There are guidelines based on the American Disability Act. Okay? It tells you 36 inches from the floor for a grab bar, horizontal, blah, 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 blah. Well, guess what? Those are not applicable to private dwellings. They're only intended for public use, for public buildings. And is intended in a generic and average way that can fit most people. Not everybody, but most people. And therefore, you cannot use that. I encounter a lot of contractors that said, well, no, this has to be a certain height according to the regulations. Regulations do not apply here. Okay? So, what else do you see there that is you could think you would have done differently? Anybody? What would you have done differently?
The rail on the other side.
Sorry?
Put the step rail on the other side of the tub. Like
Okay.
not put it in front of the only stepping place they have.
All right. So you said we're going to move it from here to here,
You could.
and then you don't have much room in here either. Yes.
Is there one that drops down from the wall?
Well, it drops down from the wall. Okay. And where would you put it?
Like kind of behind the...
On this wall over here.
Yes.
Gotcha. Good. Anybody else? Yes.
Maybe it's just the angle, but it looks like the grab bar is high to kind of push off of. It looks like you have to pull yourself, especially if it's 1%.
Yeah, actually it's the angle. The distance between here and here is only 18 inches. Anybody else? Yes.
I've actually had some people, if you move the tub rail closer toward the toilet and flip the shower seat so your back is to the water.
Okay.
We've actually had some people have good luck doing it that way.
Interesting. Very good. Anybody else?
I'd look for something that extends the seat all the way to the shower rim so that it could be used as a sliding board, and maybe looking at a different location for the grab bars.
Okay, good. Now, can I tell you what was the easiest way how to fix this problem? And you all thought so hard, and it was so simple. I got rid of this, I got rid of this, and you just give them one top transfer bench.
I was going to say that.
Very simple. All right? Here's the thing, when you think a lot through so much, you end up getting all in a pretzel. Keep things simple. All right, so what's the decision process that you need to do here? And this is the way I process when it comes to make a decision as to what the patient really will end up with, okay? One of them is, what is the most important to the client, okay? And again, I make the distinction earlier between what the patient wants and what the patient needs. You know why? Because when the patient, you give them what the patient needs, but they don't want it, what happens?
They don't use it.
They don't use it. Exactly. And so basically my approach when it comes to home mod is exactly what the patient wants and what they'll be able to do. All right? So the most things I want to go first is, and I go through this list with the client. All right? What is the most important and what is it that you can afford? All right? We go through the list first of everything they need. And we start checking on which one is the most important. Which one, then of all the important ones, which one can you afford and which one can you cannot afford. How do I do that? Well, I get online with them, okay, and I look at prices with them. There's a very good website that I use, I don't know any of you are familiar with, but just to give a client an idea of how much an equipment costs, I go to nextag.com, okay, nextag.com, and you put in any piece of equipment you want, and it will pull out hundreds of sellers that sells that equipment, and which is the cheapest, which is the most expensive, which one you have to pay shipping and handling, and which one you don't. So to give a client an idea, all right? Then I go, what are the most important ones but you cannot afford? And I'm gonna go later to explain to you why that for me is second, all right? Then we're gonna go to the ones that are important, and they can afford, again. And then the ones that are important but they can't afford, however, they may be able to do it in a different way. All right? And then last is the least important to them, but the most useful. Okay? And what I do is I start working from here. And in this process, sometimes I have to stop here with the client. Sometimes, if the client can afford and be able to do, to buy more things or accommodate more changes, then I keep going down the list. Does that make sense? Now, I use two approaches to my decision at the end once we have decide what they need is. Am I using a PI approach, which is a person-environment interaction, or am I using a universal design? Keep in mind that when the client lives with other family members, you have to make that bathroom that is useful for everybody, okay? Because if you saw the first picture, you think the rest of the family are going to be able to use that bathroom? There's too many things in there. They're not going to. And if that happens to be the only bathroom in the house, forget it, all right? When that happens, I tend to go with a universal design, and I don't know if any of you are familiar with universal design. There's 7 rules to it. It was originally designed by the North Carolina State University. The program kind of sort of died out, but there's still some people there that are still working with it. But it's not as taught as it used to be, that you could go and take your certificate on universal design. But the most common, because I deal with a lot of the elderly people that live alone or live with a spouse that is also have disabilities, I use the PEI approach, which is very specific to that client. Now, here's also things that I want you to think about. Not always is you're able to do all the modifications you want. For example, this client needed to get on the sink so she can do all the dishes and stuff. Well, this is what would be ideal, right? but it's not possible. So what do I do with my client when that's not possible? I teach them to eliminate as much stuff underneath the sink, open the doors, and put your legs in there. And sit down and use a rollator or use a stool. That way they can get very close. Why? Because if they're too far away, after 5 minutes of work, what happened to their back? They'll start hurting. They can't complete the task. All right, so, and this is the part where it said, things are important, but can be done differently because it can't afford the changes. This is one of those examples. Research potential equipment. Unfortunately, the video on this one is not working, but just to let you know, the screen doors or the patio doors, you see they have these hinges, right? This hydraulic pistons there. Where are they most of the time? Way up, right? Or way here by your knee. Now, think about someone who is in a walker, can't reach that far because they're not tall enough. How they open that door and keep the door open? How about when they're here, they have to lean forward, and they hold on to the walker with one hand, there's no stability. With this one, what they can do is, and I wish the video would work, as you go and you push that door, you can put the walker on the side. I'm gonna simulate with this one, okay? Put the walker on the side, push the door, and hold onto the frame, and just flick it with a foot. So it's at the floor level. How many of you knew about that gadget? 1, 2. See what I mean? So there is a lot of equipment out there. Become familiar with what is out there. And how can you become familiar with it? Through a lot of research. If not, there's a great show. It's called the MedTrend show. I used to go every year. MedTrend show is a home health show. And of course, because it's home health, they bring every equipment that is designed for home health. And that includes a lot of the DMEs that are used in the home. And that's how you learn about it. Yes?
Can you say the name again? Metro?
MedTrade.
Oh, trade.
MedTrade is right there.
Oh, got it.
They run 2 shows a year, one in the spring, and that one always, well, they moved it around, but now is in the spring, is in
Vegas.
Nevada, Las
Vegas.
every year. And then the fall is in Atlanta, Georgia, right? It used to be in Orlando, Florida in the spring.
They used to switch it.
And they used to swap them around, but not anymore. How am I doing now? Doing okay?
Good.
Okay. Also, measure, and measure. Let me tell you something. I'm an OT, but I always carry my measuring tape on my belt. Always is there. Why? Because I measure everything. When you don't measure, what happens?
Mistake.
You're bound to make mistakes, all right? Also, when it comes to equipment, get familiar with the dimensions of the equipment. If you ever look at the equipment and go to the specification area measurements, you know what? Use the measuring tape and draw it on the floor, you know, just get an idea how big it is. Because how many of you can have an idea, how much is 18 inches? Can you tell me between your hands? Look, that's 22, 24. That's pretty good, pretty good. Excellent, all right? So when you look at these measurements, if you have no clue of what it looks like, you won't be able to do it. And especially when it's a very tight space, the most accurate you want to be, the better. All right? For example, look at this shower. This is a shower I had to work with. Only 19 inches to enter. Now, luckily, this was not a patient that required current modification. This was a client that called me and requested aging in place. That means they're healthy, they're mobile, they live in the life break, but they want to live in the home for the rest of their life. They want to make sure, as they age, with their medical conditions, well, this bathroom will be able to accommodate their needs. And guess what the answer was? No. All right. So, but again, this is going to fall into the advanced home modification. But in this case, what would you have done if someone has some balance problems? What would you do? How about the idea that he came up with? Y'all remember? The drop seat. Why? Because you want to maintain as much room as you can. The drop seat allows you to maintain that. What else? Come on, guys.
Grab bar.
Huh?
Grab bar.
Grab bars, very good. Okay, and of course the grab bars lengthwise, and it changes depending on the client. Very good. All right, educate your client in how to use this equipment and make sure they understand and they feel comfortable and can demonstrate back to you that things are working okay. Also, in home modification, those of you who have been doing home modifications, you have found a barrier like I have, and that is funding. A lot of our clients cannot afford a lot of this equipment. Well, luckily, not that I'm a very religious guy, but I have found that teaming up with social workers and church groups has been very advantageous things for me and for my client. I have been getting equipment for free for them, brand new, ordered, and come to on my name to the client. I take it to the client. And I only ask the client one thing in return. I said, this was donated by such and such. Here's the address. I would like for you to send him a thank you card or a thank you letter. That's all I ask them to do. That's the pay. That's what they have to pay, basically. All right. Also check with Habitat for Humanity as well as Rebuilding Together in the area. A lot of times they help you, they can help you out. However, my experience has been the waiting list is almost a year long because what they're going to do this year, they already planned it at the end of last year. So whoever needs it this year will not get until next year if funding is available because they work on donations from different organizations. All right, and sometimes we just have to problem solve. That's all we can do. Sometimes we don't have to buy any equipment, we just have to problem solve with whatever they have. And for example, this was just my recent client 2 weeks ago. I didn't do the initial evaluation. This was in home health. It was done by another therapist, and the therapist said, wrote the whole plan of care, ordered the equipment, and let me follow it. So it was given to me to follow up. When I came back, the patient had laminectomy, difficulty walking, balance issues, very swollen edematous legs, 6'2", and he hasn't showered in 3 weeks. So the goal of the therapy was for him to get in the tub. I said, let's go and try to get in the tub. He looked at me and said, I don't think so. I said, what's going on? I have not looked at the bathroom yet. Because that's what it was on the plan of care to do that day. And I said, well, let's go and see. He said, well, the tub actually is in my bathroom. The family took it out. And I said, okay, well, let's put it in there. Show me how the therapist asked you to put it in there. This is how it was. For those of you who can see from here to here, 4 inches. 4 inches. How do you think, was that functional for that client? This man cannot lift his leg, first of all. They're too heavy. They're very weak from the laminectomy and they're swollen, so they're heavy. And I said, and he already has some wounds, so he cannot scrape those legs anymore, all right? So, what would you have done in this case? Come on guys, really quick, we're running out of time. What would you have done when it comes to problem solving? He can't afford anything new right now. Different toilet seat. So he's gonna have to buy another toilet seat. Okay? Now, for those of you who don't know, the measurement from here to the toilet, okay, is about 8 inches. 8 to 10 inches.
Couldn't you just remove the
He's so
toilet?
tall, that toilet is extremely low. That's why he needed the raised toilet seat. And because he doesn't have balance, he depends on his arm, he needed to have armrest. All right? So the equipment, actually, this part of the equipment is working for him. What's not working is this. So, any idea?
The
Yes.
toilet seat's pretty easy to just lift off and put back, or...
No, that one,
Oh, it's a twist. Okay.
twist and attach to it.
Can the grab bar come off the toilet seat
Huh?
on the one side
It could, yes.
and then scoot the bench back?
Okay.
Would you be able to use a chair that's only in the shower and use a leg lifter?
I gave him a leg lifter, but how he still have, if he just get a chair, how he still gonna step over and balance himself when he needs to walk around all the time? All right. So this is what I did. I pushed, this is adjustable, if you guys didn't know that. So it went in 2 inches. By moving those 2 inches, I was able to push this all the way there, and he was able to sit. Actually, this doesn't even get on his way at all. All right, because he's able to sit and then lift his leg. And actually, he's so low that he actually didn't need the leg lifter. He was able, at that point, just to use the arms and get in. All right, that would have been an easy fix. However, even that fix caused other problems. You know why? Here's a control for the water. So he needs to be taught to open the water, regulate temperature before he can get in the tub. All right? Now the shower is way up here. He's facing that way. So he needs what? A handheld shower. Let me tell you something. How many of you recommend handheld shower without on and off switch? Let me tell you something. 95% of all of you will end up recommending that. Stay away from that. Because here's what happened. You open the shower, that thing is just watering everywhere. You can't stop it. On and off switch. Once you control the temperature, on and off switch maintains that temperature. It doesn't go away, so it's comfortable for the patient. All right? It's safer to use. Now, when I tried this, he also had another problem. He was able to sit down and get the legs in, but what happened? When it was time to get up, he couldn't get out. So now we had to go for another piece of equipment. All right? I grab bar right here, so he can pull himself up. See? You can problem solve, but watch it because it's so easy to fall into a functional obsolescence that it makes no sense for the patient and the patient cannot use it. Any questions? Yes?
I don't get how he got in there because it looks like, where did he sit when he went to sit?
Was there enough space to back up to it and sit down and then swivel between the toilet and the tub bench?
Where does he sit? Like, how does he get in there?
He was able to stand here and sit right here. This section here, he was able to sit on.
Oh, there's enough room for.
There's enough room. Unfortunately, I cannot take a picture upside down. Any other question? Yes?
What was the name of the gadget that you used to open the door?
Oh, I know where to find it, but
What was the company?
I know where to find it, but
I want to.
but I'll tell you what.
I'll look for you.
Any of you are on the Maddak email system? Susan, you want to tell them about it? Because what I can
Yeah.
do is I can forward that information to Susan, and then she can send it to you guys, or you know, she can post it on the website, whatever. Here's the thing, just to wrap up a little bit, for those of you who require licensure, this course can be used for 0.25 CEUs. If you take that card with you, the licensing board always require that you have a title, goals, an abstract, and a bio of the presenter. And you can get it approved, okay? So it will be approved for 0.25 CEUs. I'll be sending Susan my bio so you can have it with you, just post it. So when it's time to do your licensure, you can go ahead and submit this and still get credit. All right? Thank you so much. If there are any other questions?